Hey everyone, on the topic of all the things fertility related that a healthcare provider doesn't tell you about or isn't chatting with you, we've been looking at a lot of new studies on the reproductive microbiome, the gut microbiome, but we've kind of missed a key component lately. And I want to chat about this um, in more detail with you because of its significance for couples that are having infertility, particularly unexplained infertility. And so, along the lines of healthy microbiomes and bacteria in our body, the male reproductive tract is no exception. And we've had studies published in the last few years basically showing that the type of bacteria that's normally present along the male reproductive tract can significantly impact the quality of the sperm, which should be no surprise. And so it's something I think is, I don't think I've ever seen a patient come in where this was mentioned to them. I think most fertility clinics will screen for like major sexually transmitted infections, obviously, but a lot of like even the normal bacteria that's present, if they're in abnormal populations, can have a significant impact on sperm health and affect fertility. So there was an interesting study published in this year, and basically what they found in an animal model was in the winter months, we have a specific distribution. We have more dominant lactobacillus bacteria in the male reproductive tract, and the lactobacillus species are part of the Firmicutes phyla of bacteria. And we have a decreased population of Pseudomonas, which is part of the Proteobacteria phyla. And this seems to actually have a beneficial impact on sperm health. So they see in this animal model that these animals are producing actually higher quality sperm in the winter because of this distribution of bacteria. In the summer months, we see that the Pseudomonas uh, population starts to grow and makes up a higher percentage of the total bacteria present on the reproductive tract. And we see a decline in the firmicutes, so we see a decline in the lactobacillus species. And this has been associated with poor sperm morphology. And poor sperm morphology, if you've been watching our videos from a few months ago, is strongly associated with elevated sperm DNA fragmentation rates, which is a very big deal, one of the biggest deals when it comes to sperm fertility testing, because it significantly impacts pregnancy loss, recurrent miscarriage, and your ability to get pregnant as well. So unexplained infertility, often we're also looking at DNA fragmentation rates for a lot of these couples. So the question becomes, where do we start this conversation with patients? A couple comes in with unexplained infertility, and they have this assumption that everything's been tested for, therefore there's nothing that's identifiable. So my work with patients a lot of the time comes down to um, going through all these additional things, which we know from an evidence-based perspective, we've seen with hundreds of couples significantly impact reproductive outcomes. So we go through that list, and one by one, we start checking off all the things that haven't been tested and check for that. And among the things that have been, come back as positive symptomatically or on lab tests, we treat. And that's why we see a lot of these couples may end up having better improved outcomes with a future IVF, IUI, or why a large number of these patients may end up getting pregnant on their own during a natural cycle. So the bacteria in the reproductive tract is a huge component of this as well. And so in other parts of the body, like the lung, the digestive tract, when we have diversity in the microbiome, it's usually a healthy thing. We want other types of bacterial strains there, they balance each other out. In the reproductive tracts for uterine and seminal health, it's kind of the opposite. We actually want a decreased diversity and potentially a higher concentration of these lactobacillus species because they seem to have the most beneficial role in reproductive health. So it's not that we're getting rid of all other bacteria, but they should be the dominant strain, ideally, or as dominant as they can be. And a lot of these bacteria are influenced significantly through our diet, our lifestyle, the type of foods we're having. So processed sugars, high fat diets versus lots of plant based, veggie based fruit, healthy meats, healthy fats. And then the role of antioxidants and micronutrients in helping to support the sperm cells from any damage that might be present through increased reactive oxygen species. So when we see increased oxidative stress, the sperm cells are incredibly vulnerable. So it's very important to help boost your partners or the sperm donors' uh, total antioxidant capacity to fight off a lot of these fight off the oxidative stress. And the sperm cells, we have to shrink them during their maturation. So we take a lot of the cytoplasm out of that sperm head. So instead of being like this big, it comes down very small, the sperm head. And when we take that cytoplasm out of the cell, we also take out a lot of the antioxidants. So sperm cells rely very heavily on the antioxidants in the seminal fluid, but not inside the sperm. So they're usually from dietary sources or an endogenous antioxidant, glutathione. And ways to help improve that usually depend very heavily on supplementation, your lifestyle, and reducing exposure to chemicals, to particulate matter, air pollution, things that increase oxidative stress, along with healthy amounts of exercise and maintaining a healthy weight. So it's just one of those things. I'm specifically repeating this again because I distinctly remember um, pursuing some additional testing and with a particular couple. And I remember their healthcare provider said to them, even if it comes back as positive, what does it matter? And to me, it just felt like sometimes not everyone on your healthcare team is on the same page because obviously, if you have unexplained infertility, finding out the cause of what's the issue on its own has a huge level of satisfaction because now we can identify what the cause is. And then we can also look at how to specifically treat that cause of infertility instead of just going for IVF or IUI again and again when it's not working. We start looking at these other causes and ways to reduce their impact on your reproductive function. um, you know, it only makes sense to try something different, to try something evidence based, to try something which we know can impact your fertility by reducing these harmful, for in this case, harmful bacteria. So it's just one of those things that sometimes we have to advocate for ourselves when it comes to reproductive function. It's something that a lot of patients have to do self, research on, and to educate themselves on, through other online resources such as this video, for example, as a starting point, to really look into like what might else, be contributing to something like unexplained infertility. Because unexplained infertility isn't, really unexplained. It just means we haven't figured out what's causing it. It doesn't mean that there's no cause for the infertility. It just means we haven't figured out what that is. So the only way we can figure that out is either through additional testing or looking closer at the symptoms and lifestyle and dietary choices and all these modifiable risk factors for fertility treatments. So it's really important, whatever fertility treatment you're going for, whether it's natural cycles, IVF, or IUI, your treatment has to be holistic. It has to look at all of these underlying factors that we have to approach the fertility from all angles because fertility isn't dependent on just one organ system. Fertility is the healthy product of a balanced body, of a balanced physiology, balanced biochemistry of the body. So we need, if you have diabetes and you're not managing your diabetes properly, we know that negatively impacts sperm health, beyond what someone of a healthy age who doesn't have diabetes would ever have to deal with. So sometimes there's like other health conditions. Sometimes it's even medications. There was this beautiful review published earlier this year looking at so many common medications and how they negatively impact sperm health. And a lot of them are common medications, even antihistamines that we use for allergies. How many of us are using antihistamines throughout the summer for all the, pollen and all these environmental allergies? And, is that contributing to your infertility? What are the other alternatives to looking at treating your allergies and potentially reducing the need for these medications? So it's just something I think, if you know it, and you know the value of treating it. And a lot of these patients know the value of treatment because they see the improvement in their sperm health. Once they treat these factors and they repeat the sperm analyses and see an improvement. And which we should also mention, the bar for sperm fertility has been set so low. It's really come down. Like the average sperm concentration per milliliter of sperm, has halved over the last 2 decades in certain studies and population studies. Sperm morphology in the late 90s, we used to say a healthy sperm morphology is above 80%. Then in the 2000s, we said normal sperm morphology should be around 50%. Now the bar is at 4%. So the bar is so low. So when patients come in and say, well, my sperm health is okay, it really doesn't mean much because sperm health, sky's the limit. The better the numbers, the better off you are in some cases. So, normal sperm is not optimal sperm for fertility treatments, and something you need to discuss in a lot more detail with your healthcare provider.